Gen X people have this calm, I've seen things look in their eyes, like they're not shocked by anything anymore. The Wi-Fi goes out, the economy crashes. A new social media trend appears every week and they're just like, yeah, that tracks. They're not dramatic, they're not loud, they're not constantly online posting their feelings in real time. And yet, they somehow seem mentally tougher. So what's going on inside the minds of Generation X? Why are they so independent, so sarcastic, so quietly resilient? And why do they often feel like the middle child of generations? Let's talk about the psychology of Gen X without the boring textbooks. And with a few real-life examples, you'll definitely recognize. What even is Gen X? Generation X usually refers to people born roughly between 1965 and 1980. They came after the baby boomers and before millennials. And honestly, that timing changed everything. Boomers grew up in an era of big optimism and big systems. Millennials grew up in the digital age with constant connection. But Gen X, they grew up in the middle of massive change when old systems were cracking and new ones weren't fully built yet. Imagine growing up with a rotary phone, then suddenly seeing the internet appear. Imagine playing outside all day with no tracking apps, then one day getting your first email address. Their brains developed in a world that kept shifting under their feet, and psychology loves that kind of story. One of the biggest psychological influences on Gen X is something called the latchkey kid phenomenon. Many Gen X kids came home from school to an empty house. Their parents were working, divorced, or just busy, so they had keys, snacks, and a lot of unsupervised time. This didn't automatically make them unhappy, but it did make them independent early. Picture a 10-year-old Gen X kid microwaving their own food, doing homework alone, and watching TV unsupervised. That kid learned, very quietly, I can handle things myself. Psychologically, this creates a strong self-reliance pattern. They didn't expect adults to fix everything. They became their own problem solvers. Fast forward to adulthood, and you get someone who's great in a crisis, but terrible at asking for help. If you've ever talked to someone from Gen X, you've probably noticed the sarcasm, dry humor, a little dark, a little, life is weird, what can you do? That's not just a personality quirk, it's psychology. Humor is a coping mechanism. When people grow up with uncertainty, economic shifts, changing family structures, cultural transitions, humor becomes a safe way to process it. Instead of saying, this is scary, you joke about it. Instead of saying, I feel vulnerable, you make a sarcastic comment. It's emotional armor, but a friendly one. Gen X often gets overlooked. Boomers get talked about a lot. Millennials and Gen Z dominate social media. Gen X is just there. Psychologically, this can create a strange identity. They're used to not being the main character in cultural conversations. They're used to being the bridge generation. That can make them incredibly adaptable. When you're not the spotlight generation, you learn to adjust quietly. You don't expect the world to revolve around you. You just figure out how to function in whatever world you're given. It's like being the middle child at a family dinner, less attention, more independence, fewer expectations. Gen X grew up during big institutional changes, scandals, political shifts, economic recessions. They saw that systems weren't perfect. So psychologically, many Gen Xers developed a healthy skepticism. They don't blindly trust corporations, governments, or trends. They tend to think, let's wait and see. This doesn't make them conspiracy theorists. It makes them cautious observers. Imagine buying a product because an influencer said it's life-changing. A Gen X person might say, yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. Their brains learn that hype fades, but reality stays. Gen X often appears emotionally stable and composed. They're not usually posting emotional breakdowns online. They're not constantly talking about their feelings. But that doesn't mean they don't feel deeply. Psychologically, many learn to internalize emotions. They didn't grow up in an era where emotional expression was widely encouraged. Therapy wasn't mainstream. Mental health wasn't trending on TikTok. So they learn to process feelings privately. That can make them seem stoic. But inside, there's often a complex emotional world just not broadcasted. Gen X is known for a strong work ethic, but also a quiet cynicism about work. They saw their parents dedicate their lives to companies that later downsized, restructured, or disappeared. So they learned, work hard, but don't worship work. Psychologically, this creates a balanced relationship with careers. They value stability, but they don't fully trust corporations to take care of them. They're the kind of people who'll do their job well, but also keep their resume updated, just in case. Gen X grew up analog and became digital adults. They remember life before smartphones. They also know how to use them. This gives them a unique psychological perspective. They can unplug without panicking. They can use technology without fully identifying with it. A Gen X person can enjoy social media, but they're less likely to tie their entire identity to it. They know life existed before notifications, and it was actually pretty nice. Many Gen Xers grew up with less supervision and more independence. Their attachment styles can lean towards self-sufficiency. They often value space, autonomy, and personal boundaries. They can be deeply loyal partners and friends, but they don't usually like emotional dependency. Think of them as the friend who will show up at 2 a.m. to help you move, but won't text you good morning every day. Here's the surprising part. All of this independence, sarcasm, skepticism, and emotional control, it creates resilience. Gen X is often very good at handling uncertainty. They've seen trends rise and fall, technologies change, cultures shift, so they don't panic easily. Their psychology is built around adaptation. In a world that changes fast, that's a superpower. But every strength has a cost. When you're used to handling everything yourself, it's easy to feel invisible. People assume you're fine. They don't check in. They don't offer help. Gen X can sometimes feel like the generation that quietly carries things without being seen. They're not loud about their struggles. They're not loud about their achievements either. They just keep going. If you're Gen X and this resonates, it's not random. Your brain and nervous system adapted to the world you grew up in. You're not cold, you're calibrated. And if you're not Gen X but recognize these traits in someone you know, now you know why they are the way they are. They're not distant. They're just from a generation that learned to be strong without being told they were strong.